Cool. So we are going to be talking about 8 ways to break through a training plateau. So if you're at the point where you've been training for a period of time, maybe things have started to slow down, you're not seeing the progress that you once were, you're kind of stalling, stuttering on certain different exercises, then I've got 8 tips for you that you can follow, put into place, and actually start to make some progress, break through that plateau, and keep making progress and keep pushing forward. So we are going to break down those 8 different things, and I'm going to talk you through each one of those in a second. But before I launch into that, what I want to do is tell you how you can get more information after I've been through these 8 different steps. Because once you're going through this, you're going to say, wow, how do I get more information? How do I find out more about proper training? How do I find more about proper nutrition? Then cool. What I've got for you in the notes section of this episode is a link to a Kickstarter pack. Now that Kickstarter pack is going to have a load of information over the course of 7 days. Each day you're going to be sent something new, a different guide, a different thing to help you along your journey. So first day, you're going to get a free 4-week training program. Second day, you're going to get a nutrition guide. Third day, you're going to get a guide about cravings, and so on over the course of a 7-day period. So you get all the things that you need to kickstart your journey to a leaner, healthier life. So grab that. Link is in the notes if you want to go and get that. So let's move on to our 8 ways to break through a training plateau. Now, first of all, what I think we should start with actually defining what a plateau is, because I think people get confused or maybe misconstrue what a plateau actually is. Because when you first get into the gym and you start lifting weights, everything's great. You can pretty much do anything and you'll make progress. You know, 1 week to the next, your strength gains are going up by kilo after kilo after kilo. You're on the bench press, you're banging on weights left, right, and center. You're doing, ladies, you're doing your hip thrusts and you're just banging on plates like there's no tomorrow. Week after week after week, it seems to be you're making more and more progress. But then it starts to slow down. Then it starts to become a little bit more difficult to make those breakthroughs. It becomes a little bit more difficult to add weight to the bar, to add more reps and things like that. However, this doesn't necessarily mean you're hitting a plateau, because you've got to think about, like a lot of things within life, not just in fitness, is that, when you first start something, you get a lot of progress very, very quickly, and then it starts to taper off. You start to get that sort of plateau effect. It's just that in a lot of cases, because this is new stimulus within the gym, then you make progress very, very quickly early on. Now, that could be a sense that it's kind of giving you a false impression of how much progress you should be able to make week on week. Typically, you are not going to make those huge leaps in progress every single week. That slowdown is not necessarily you hitting a plateau. The other thing to mention is that a lot of you will be in a calorie deficit. So your primary goal will be to lose body fat. That's what you want to be doing. You want to be leaner, you want to be stronger, you want to look sexy as goddamn fuck. So you've got to put yourself in a calorie deficit. Now, by definition, you've reduced the amount of energy you're giving your body. So by doing that, can you really expect to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and getting more strength, more progress? It's unlikely that you're going to be able to sustain that for week after week after week, month after month. There is going to be a point where that starts to slow down purely from the fact that you're in a calorie deficit, and it is much more difficult to keep making strength gains and muscle gains in a calorie deficit. It just becomes a more difficult process. So bear that in mind. If you're in a calorie deficit, then either a slowdown in progress, or if you are already fairly well trained, or you're like an intermediate level and you've got some muscle and you're trying to cut down, you would expect to lose some reps. You would expect to lose some strength in that process. Obviously, if your strength drops off a cliff and it's completely unrecognizable to when you started, that's probably a different kettle of fish, as we say in the UK. So bear that in mind. Deficit may mean that you are going to get some impact to your strength and some impact to your progress at some point within that journey, especially if it is, say, you're going into 12 weeks, 16 weeks, however long your process of losing body fat is. The other thing would be to say is that you might have an expectation that you're going to make progress in every exercise every single week. And that's just not realistic. It's just not going to happen. You might make progress in one exercise 1 week, and that might then stutter for a couple of weeks. Then you might not make any progress in the last exercise of your workout, and then that happens for a few weeks on the trot. And that's just a case of, this is just how things work. It's not a perfect science that you just launch into a workout that's got, say, 5 exercises in it, and every single exercise progresses incrementally over the course of each time you do that workout. It's just not going to happen that way. Again, it might happen that way in the early stages, but moving further forward, that's just not going to be the way it works. Because let's say, for example, you're looking at the 5th exercise in that workout. You're going to be pretty fatigued by the time you get there. By the time you get to that exercise, you're going to be pretty tired. So, from one week to the next, your energy level by the time you hit that particular exercise can be very, very different. So one week it might be really good, one week it might be really bad, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're hitting a plateau. So what does a plateau really mean? So for me, I would say I generally look at what are the key exercises within a program. So for example, you might have 2 or 3 exercises per workout that are the really, really ones that you want to focus on. They're part of you achieving your particular goal, whatever that may be. So if you're a guy, you might be focusing on bench press, you might be focusing on some shoulder work, and you might be focusing on some squats, or whatever your exercises are. Likewise for ladies, it might be something to do with shoulders, glutes, and legs, and all that sort of stuff. So I would look at those. Firstly, are they progressing? And by progressing, I would be saying, over the course of a 3-week period, have you increased at least by a repetition? So if you're working in an 8 to 10 rep range, are you lifting the same weight 9 times versus the 8 times that you were, or 10 times versus the 8 times that you were? If for any reason over a 3 to 4 week period, you've not been able to increase 1 repetition, then I would say you're starting to hit a plateau at that point. And firstly, I would look at those key exercises, because that would be what I would be focusing on, because they are the most important exercises to you. Some of the other ones later into the program, then, they're less important. Yes, okay, you might want to look at them from a progression perspective, but they are less important, probably not ones you're going to focus on in the key, these key stages. So now we've got a definition of what a plateau isn't, and now we've got a definition of what a plateau is. So now we're going to look at what are the things you can actually do to try and break through that plateau. Now, I've got 8 things for you, not 3, that's 3. I've got 8, I can count. There you go, there's 8. Okay, so the first one is going to be your form. So on previous episodes of podcasts and things like that, I've talked about how to focus on form and making sure that you're performing exercises correctly. Now, if you are performing an exercise correctly, depending on what that exercise is that could be a limiting factor on how much weight you can move further down the line. You might be able to get away with poor form early on and add some weight to the bar, but actually the further you progress, if your form is poor, then you're going to find it much more difficult to actually move more weight and actually move more reps and actually keep progressing. That form is going to make you hit some form of plateau. So I would literally assess your form. Take a video. I know you feel a bit self-conscious doing this sort of video sort of thing in the gym, but it has more benefit than just doing nice, sexy Instagram posts for your social media following. You can actually use it to analyze your form. You can slow it down. You can see where things aren't going so right. You can see what you're doing well, and you can start to tweak and improve on that. So that would be the first thing that I would do, is on those key exercises, I would video your form from a couple of different angles, and then either assess it yourself if you kind of know what you're looking for, or get someone else to assess it for you. And then you can start to tweak and adjust that. It might mean that you need to cut back on the weight to get the form right, to be able to progress forward. But again, this is like long-term stuff. You are actually, maybe sacrificing some weight on the bar now for long-term progress, which is actually what we want. We're not here to ego lift. We're not bros. We're not bros. We are people that are actually making progress. So form is one thing. The next one is sleep and recovery. So if you've got poor sleep patterns, if you're not recovering well, if you're not focusing on your nutrition, then chances are that the longer you allow that to happen, there's going to be a compounding effect. Again, when you're in the first week of training, for example, you might get away with that. You might get away with not having your nutrition on point. You might get away with not having your sleep optimized. But the longer you go with poor sleep and the longer you go with poor nutrition, you are going to quickly start to decline in terms of the amount of progress that you're able to make in the gym. So, if you just think about rocking up into the gym, absolutely fucking knackered. Maybe you got a hangover from the night before because you're 3 sheets to the wind and you're half cut, going into the gym and trying to expect a weightlifting PB is just not going to happen. And then you'll be going, oh man, I've hit a fucking plateau. I've hit a fucking plateau. No, you've been hitting the fucking drink too much, me old fruit, or whatever it is. So whatever's, maybe if you have got a poor sleep pattern, correct that first. So whether that is making sure that you go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, and getting into a nice rhythm, whether it's to do with your sleep environment, shutting down tablet phones, and all those different sorts of devices so that you can actually get good sleep. That would be one thing. Recovery is also another. So making sure that you are focusing in on your nutrition, your protein intake, your calorie intake, making sure that is right, optimized. You're getting the vitamins and minerals that you need so that your diet is optimized to help you recover and help you perform in the gym. That would be point 2. The third point is that you might be due a rest or a deload week. Now, what would happen here is that generally speaking is that within any sort of, I would say, 12-week period, you probably want some form of deload or rest, depending on what you're doing. I mean, if you're very much a beginner and you're starting off with very light weights, low intensity, your need for a deload week is much more reduced. However, if you're training with a high degree of intensity, a high degree of volume, then you are probably going to need a deload or a rest week at some point within a 12-week period, just to give your body a chance to recharge, re-energize, and then you can go again. So it could be that if you're sort of hitting this plateau, maybe you're overreaching in terms of your volume, maybe you're overreaching in terms of your intensity, and you just need to spend some time just dialing back that intensity for a week and then go again. That could be one reason why you're hitting this plateau and one quick solution for you actually to break through that. The other thing is, I would say, I've labeled this on my little pad here, grow a bigger nutsack. Now, there is obviously a female equivalent. I'm not sure what the female equivalent of a nutsack is, but whatever it is, basically I'm talking about effort here, effort. There is a case of people sometimes think they push hard in the gym, but actually do they? Now, again, this is only something you will know when you sort of ask yourself a real honest question. Did I push myself as hard as I possibly could in that workout? Did I maximize my form? Did I maximize all the things that Simon's been talking about on various different podcasts? Did I maximize all of that? And did I actually give 100% effort as much as I possibly could within that particular exercise, that set, all those reps, all of that sort of stuff? Did I actually put in my all? The other thing you could do would be to get a training partner to push you that little bit further. So to actually push you beyond where you think you can go as an individual, and then actually get that push forward for those extra 1 or 2 reps that in this stage could make the difference between you plateauing or not. So grow a bigger nutsack, or female equivalent of nutsack. Next one is, if you're in a calorie deficit, try more calories. Now, this might be a little bit of a contradiction in terms, but what I'm saying here is, if you created like quite a big deficit, now obviously this will be nuanced for individuals. If you made this big deficit, let's say you're balls deep in a calorie deficit, you've tried to lose as much weight as possible, your deficit's quite big, then you could be, again, sort of almost like double punishing yourself by having a huge deficit and trying to train really hard. Now, you can absolutely diet in a big calorie deficit. So you're up to like 40% calorie deficit is possible for the right person in the right circumstances. Again, I've got podcasts on to talk you through when and when you shouldn't do that sort of approach. But let's say you're the type of person that could do a rapid fat loss approach. Now, if you try to combine that with a heavy, high intensity resistance training program, then you're probably not going to do yourself many favors, and you are definitely going to hit some plateaus, or you're even going to have some drop in strength and drop in technique and all those different sorts of things. So if you are in that situation where your deficit is huge and you're still trying to push hard in the gym, reduce that deficit. have some more calories, use that as energy in the gym so you can perform better in the gym. So in that sense, manage your calorie deficit with your training and don't necessarily try to, again, overreach with calories that actually then compromise a lots of other things as well. So bear that in mind, all about balance. The next one is cardio. Now, if you're doing a bunch of cardio, again, you could cut back on that cardio to give yourself, those calories that you are actually burning through cardio. If, let's say, for example, it was a significant amount of cardio that you were doing, let's say you cut back on that, those calories you then effectively are saving, that could be energy utilized into your actual weight training, which could help you push through those plateaus that you're at right now. And again, this will depend on where you're at with your training, what stage you are, and where you're at with your diet and what stage of dieting that you are at, if that is what you're doing. So I would potentially start to cut back on cardio. Particularly, if you're in a surplus and doing cardio and hitting a plateau, it'd be one of the first things I'd cut out or cut back on would be cardio. So make sure that you're not overdoing the cardio. And then we've got the last two things. So the next one is going to be adjust the rep range. So what we're trying to do here is effectively, when we're trying to bust through a plateau, you're trying to increase the training volume that's going through that particular muscle. At the moment, you're stuck at a particular training volume. Let's say you're doing 4 sets, 8 reps at X weight, then you're stuck there. You're stuck at that particular training volume within that exercise. You want to actually try and bust through that. So you might say then, well, if you have to do the calculations here, I'm not clever enough to do the calculations quickly in my head, but if you were to reduce the weight but increase the reps, but then when you do sets times reps times weight, that number is greater than the one you were stuck at, you are increasing volume. So, okay, you've not increased the number of reps at that weight, but you have increased the total training volume going through that particular muscle. And if you did that for 3-4 weeks, then you should see some improvement. And then you could do the opposite to that. You could increase the weight and reduce the rep range. So if you're in an 8 to 10 rep range and you're trying to progress up to 9 reps and that's where you're getting stuck, you can, like I said just then, reduce the volume and do more reps, or you could increase the weight and do less reps. So you'd have to, again, work it out. But if you were to do 6 reps of a given weight times the number of sets, then is that number greater than the 8 repetitions at whatever weight you were doing previously? If it is, you're adding more volume into that particular exercise, you're adding more volume into that muscle. Over time, that should then help you break through that plateau. So that would be one way of actually doing it, is adjusting those rep ranges. And this is something that I structure within client programs. So they don't necessarily know it's happening, but it is happening. So, for example, we try to avoid training plateaus by maybe for 4 weeks, we go into 1 rep range, and then we might add a set. We might then reduce the rep range so that they're forced to add more weight, but overall they're trying to increase training volume and not have these sort of plateau situations. So that would be a thing you could do there. And the last one, the last of the 8 tips, is going to be using drop sets and rest pause sets. Now you might think, what the fuck's a drop set and what's the fuck's a rest pause set? So again, if you think about what we're trying to do here, we're trying to increase the training volume. Now, by doing a drop set, you're instantly just increasing the amount of volume. So a drop set being, if I'm doing side raises, 10 kilos, I'm doing that for 8 repetitions. I then might, as soon as I finish my 8 repetitions, drop that weight, pick up a 6 kilo, and then do as many reps as I can with the 6 kilos. So that's a drop set. You're dropping the weight without a rest from your actual main set. You can you could do a double drop set if you really wanted to. So you could go from maybe 10 to 6 to 4, all with no rest, and that would be like a double drop set. So you can do that. Again, all you're doing is adding more and more stimulus to that muscle to trying to force it to actually grow, to get stronger, to get bigger, whatever it is the goal that you're going for. So you could do that. A rest pause is effectively where, in that situation, you've got your 10 kilo weight, you do your 8 repetitions, and then you pause for, say, 10 seconds, and then you do as many reps as you can again. You might only get, say, 4 reps out there, but again, it's more volume that's going through that muscle, more stimulus. Hopefully then you're going to break through that plateau. So there would be the 8 things that I would do to actually trying to break through your plateau. So first of all, make sure you are actually at a plateau. Make sure you're just not just being too hard on yourself and expecting too much before you even really have got anywhere, really. And then the 8 things you can do. Check your form, make sure that's A1. Make sure your sleep and your recovery is on point. You can take a rest or a deload week. You can grow a bigger nutsack and put in more effort. If you're in a huge deficit, maybe reduce that deficit and increase calories. You can ditch cardio if you're doing a ton of that. You can change the rep range, and you can do drop sets and rest pause sets. So hopefully you found that useful. Hopefully you can now go forth and go use that within your training regime, bust through some plateaus and actually start to make some progress and start to pick through some of the stalls that you've had at the moment. Make sure that you kind of are always pushing forward, always moving forward. So hopefully that helped. If it did, let me know. You can come and, I'm always hanging out on Instagram, sadly. So if you want to come and see me there, drop me a message. You can go to @iron_paradise_fitness. Find me there, drop me a message, give me a follow, give me some sort of likes and all that sort of stuff that people crave. But yeah, do all of that. Cool. Awesome. Right. So I'm going to leave you to it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know. If you didn't, don't let me know. All right. I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.